Hello and welcome to my How to Paint Warhammer Quest Darkwater series. This series is designed to be beginner friendly and aimed at those who might be picking up Darkwater as their first foray into the hobby. In this video we'll start to tackle the villains miniatures, and there are quite a few, beginning with the Mire Kelpies. We will be starting from a bone over a black Zenithal Prime, and you can see how this was achieved in 3 different methods shown here. Essentially airbrushed, rattle-canned or dry brushed. And as part of this video we will also show how all of these slightly different primed minis look at the end. We'll also be breaking this into 2 separate parts, so we'll first of all be looking at a quick and dirty approach where the focus is to get your miniatures to a playable standard using just 3 colours. Bone White, Skeleton Horde Contrast, and Coelia Greenshade. Before we get into it, the box art and booklets provided with the box provide us with some amazing reference and inspirational material, as does the GW website, where you can often find 360-degree reference images for most models. I use it all the time. So, starting with the Coelia Greenshade and using our larger brush, we will take quite a hefty amount and begin painting this all over the main area of this mini. Starting at the top and working our way around. We're using this more like a contrast paint rather than a wash, and it does give us a lovely murky dark water color. Do be careful when you're applying here to avoid the parts that are clearly bone or antler, and you can see here that the shade is more of a tint that's being applied to the primer underneath, allowing that established Zenithal Prime to do most of the heavy lifting when it comes to color differentiation between the lighter and darker areas of the model. We can then take some Skeleton Horde onto the bone and the antlers, and we're going to stick with our larger brush for this. Just be careful when you are applying this to deal with any areas that it pulls in, and clean your brush and then wick away any that you need to, just like I had to do here. Now we're going to go back to our Bone White, and using our dry brush, or in our case this makeup brush, we've taken off more paint than when we were doing the priming, which was honestly closer to overbrushing rather than dry brushing. But here we're just trying to drag the brush over all of the raised areas to bring out the detail. The effect is quite subtle, and the more you work at it, the more it will be defined. But it definitely brings some nice definition to the details while allowing the shade we've already put down to stay in the recesses. And that's pretty much it. The tabletop ready model done. We'll now look at another mini in a bit more depth to see what we can pick out to bring out the details. We can also look at a more controlled method of picking out the bone and antlers rather than just relying on a contrast paint. First things first though, we will pick out all of the body, again using Coelia Greenshade, being careful this time to avoid the leaves and detritus held within the swampy body, as well as all the bone and the antlers. I'll finish doing that and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, next up we're going to use some Mournfang Brown. We cover the entirety of the bone and the antlers. This is a base paint, so I have thinned it down slightly with some water before applying. The benefit of having the bone prime here is that it really complements the brown without the need for several layers. So I'm just going to finish painting the brown and then we can move on to the next bit. Next up we're going to use some Athonian Camoshade, which will help to tint the leaves and the detritus and give us a nice subtle green colour. As this is essentially a wash, it will require 2 layers, but again, allow that prime coat to show through. I'm just going to finish up the other side and we'll be back with the next step. I decided that the swampy body wasn't quite rich enough of a colour, so I went in again with the Coelia Greenshade, focusing this time more on the areas that would be in shadow. Thinking of the layers and the folds much like cloth or robes instead of a slimy form, this kind of allows me to have a better control over where the shadows or the deeper colours are as opposed to just relying on gravity to define your shapes for you, it's not always the best. Here we see there is a quick comparison between the depth of color this gives us over the quickly painted tabletop model we finished up earlier on. Now, we're going to then take a mix 50-50 of our brown color, which we're using Mournfang Brown, and our bone color, Bone White, to begin to color in the skulls and the skull and antlers, creating a nice mid-tone between the base color and our highlight color. So rather than just relying on a shade or a contrast paint here to create our shadows or the darker areas, we are just going to begin painting out the details, leaving the brown in the recessed area, and we're trying to cover about 2/3 of the brown area in this tan color. Alright, things are really starting to take shape now. We've picked out the areas of the skull that were of interest, namely the teeth and the sockets, and kind of the sharper points of the antlers. I'm now just going to use the bone color on its own, thinning it down roughly 1 drop of paint to 3 drops of water, and use this for the remaining parts of the model. We're going to use this in 2 different areas. Firstly, we're going to pick out all of the areas of the bone antlers that we want to emphasize, essentially the jaw, the teeth, the eye sockets, and some of the sharper points of the antlers. And then secondly, we're going to use this to pick out more of the bulbous section of the body, or the drips. I'm not trying to overpower what's there, simply bring out the details a wee bit. There are quite a lot of these bulbous areas, so I'm going to just finish them up and I'll be right back real quick. Alright, there we go. With the addition of a few extra steps, we've elevated this humble mini from a tabletop level to something a little bit more interesting. Here's again a side-by-side between the two. The quick one, tabletop ready, took me about 3 minutes of painting time, and the more detailed one a little bit longer, but no more than 20 minutes in total. And as promised, here is the 3 different primed examples finished up to a tabletop level to compare. The middle one is our dry brushed model, the left one is the one we primed with the rattle can, and the one on the right is the airbrush primed model. At this stage, I'm sure you'll agree there's little to differentiate the end result between them. Thank you for watching. Please, if you enjoyed this video or found parts of it useful for painting your own Darkwater collection, do please leave a comment below. I do read every single one, and feel free to like and subscribe and share the video with anyone you think would also find it useful. Until next time, take care.